Hello, how are you? I am Siona from Honouring ME Crochet and the Hooked on Crochet Club, and I am here today to give you some guidance with how to read a crochet pattern, because one thing I find over and over that holds crocheters back is that they cannot read a pattern. And to me, that would be most frustrating, because reading a pattern just opens up the world of crochet so much more. So I'm not going to show you patterns to read. I'm just going to give you some instructions and things to think of to help make learning to read a pattern much easier. Now, reading patterns is something that I have set the Hooked on Crochet Club up to help our members learn with my different tools that I've got in there. And if you go to my Crochet Learning Corner Facebook group, which is a free group, I will later on, hi Sam, add a guide that I'm covering today in this live. All right. So one of the first things that you will need to do if you want to learn to read the patterns is learn your stitches. So many crocheters do not know the names of their stitches. They don't know if they're using US or UK terms. And so that holds you back, because you spend half the time trying to remember what the stitch is before you can actually start making it. So you struggle with that. So I have, and another thing I've done, and I'll put this in the comments here now, is I have put together a stitch guide, which you can download. And the aim of that stitch guide is to give you a quick reference to know what the stitches are, so that you can, and the guide itself has the symbol, the abbreviation, and how to make it. So you can easily refer to that to help you read the pattern. Because if you don't understand the name, so if I say double crochet, do you know what that is? Firstly, am I talking US or UK terms? So that's there to help you. So you've got to learn your stitches first. And also the abbreviations and the symbols that go with them, because they are uniform, but they're uniform for the language. So if you're talking, and when I say language, I'm talking US terms or UK terms, which UK terms are also usually Australian terms. It also helps if you learn the rules to rounds and rows, because with those, it can help you decipher the pattern, because sometimes patterns aren't written in a way that will make sense, because everyone thinks differently and reads differently, so they're going to write differently as well. Now, I'm used to writing procedures, so I try when I write my patterns to make it easier for people to read them. And I know over time I've even modified some of how I write my patterns. But understanding the rules around rounds and rows, so whether you're working in a circle or working backwards and forwards in a row, can help you decipher the pattern as well. And another little thing that I've got, if you want that, is a beginner's guide, which if you learned from a friend or a relative, you might not know all the rules behind it. So this beginner's guide, I actually explain that in it as well. So you can download that too to help you get some of that background. So then once you understand the stitch names and the abbreviations, what I would suggest you do if you want to learn to read a pattern is practice with something that you already know how to make. Now, most of us would know how to make a granny square, so I would start with that. It's a simple thing to make, and so the pattern itself is going to be relatively simple as well. So, or if there's something else that you've made that you know you've got a written pattern for, but you've made it either from a video or someone showing you, then get that out and start with that, because sometimes it will help to actually read the pattern with something you know, so that when you're trying to work it out and you follow the instructions, you can then see if what you're reading is what you're used to seeing when you make it. And then, oops, sorry about that, my speaker just turned off. So hopefully that makes sense. So start with a granny square, follow the instructions and see if it turns out as a granny square. If it does, then you know you've read the instructions right. If it doesn't, then you need to go back to the drawing board, see what it is that doesn't work. It might even be the pattern itself isn't making sense. All right, and then there are certain little tricks and tools that people will commonly use. Now, sometimes patterns will have assumed knowledge. Now, quite often, for example, in amigurumi patterns, increase. Now, they'll put that, but they won't explain what that is. But that is do 2 of the stitches in the same stitch. So you need to learn first to read and decipher the pattern. So there are some things that will be used that you can then, they're designed to help. Well, they're usually the same. I write them differently because to me, I think it takes too much effort to try and figure out and remember where the brackets and things ends. But what they'll tend to use is they'll have an asterisk or 2 asterisks sometimes as well. And what they're saying with that is whatever is written between the asterisks is what you're going to repeat over and over and over. So, for example, if you're making a granny square, every round you're going to be doing 3 double crochets together in a space. So instead of writing that for every time you do it, they'll put it in brackets or asterisks, sorry, and they'll tell you to repeat that however many times you need to repeat it. They will also use brackets. So brackets can be used for 2 things. So it might be used to explain something that's just written. For example, quite often at the start of a pattern, you'll do a start of a row, you'll do a chain 3, and then in brackets they might put this will count as a double crochet, or if you're using UK terms, this will count as a treble for the wherever it's said throughout. So that's they're explaining patterns, but then they will also use them for if you've got to do multiple stitches into 1 stitch. So they'll put them in brackets so that you know that, for example, if it says 3 double crochet and they're in brackets, you know that those 3 double crochet go into 1 stitch. So they'll have that as well. That's generally common terminology or techniques that they will use to explain it. And then they'll also abbreviate the stitches and instructions to make it shorter. So they're not going to keep writing out double crochet. You're going to need to learn either the symbol or that DC is double crochet. And I'm going to keep using double crochet because at least that's one that's used across both languages. So however you picture it in your head, you're at least seeing something. And then when it comes to reading a chart, now the chart is really just symbols, and charts can sometimes be easier to learn from than the written instructions, depending on what works best for you. But generally the chart is a picture of what you're making. So the chart has every stitch as a symbol, which is why I suggest that you learn the symbols and then know what they mean, which is where my stitch guide, which the link is in the comments there, is something that can help you with that. So if you're looking at a chart that's in a circle, you're going to read the chart in the direction that you make the circle. Okay, and they will generally pretty much always have the numbers at the start of the row or the round where it is that you're supposed to read from first. So they'll put a number there and then you read from that number and around in your circle. Now, if you're reading a chart that's in rows, what you'll see is that the numbers are at opposite ends because you're going to read for one row, you're going to read it in the direction that you would normally read. And then the other row, you're going to read in the opposite direction to what you normally read. So, but as long as you start from where the number is and then either read it. So if it's on the right, you'll read it from the right to the left. And if it's on the left, you'll read it from the left to the right. Okay. They'll also use color sometimes in a chart. Now the chart can, if it's in color, it might mean that they are showing you that each round is a different color, and it will usually tell you if that's what it means, or it will be just showing you that it is a different round or row, which is especially helpful when you've got stitches that go down to a different row or down to a different round. Then it helps if they're alternating colors so you can sort of see more easily where it's going from. And another way as well that can help if you're making something new, and I'll quite often do this with a square, is they'll have the written instructions and the charts, and 9 times out of 10 I'll end up using the chart, but sometimes I'll revert back to their written instructions because especially if it's something a little bit more complicated, it can help explain the chart. Thank you, Deb. This is Deb's comment here. I'll just show that on the screen. Reading a pattern was an absolute nightmare for her until she crossed paths with me on the Crochet Whisperer. Ah, you're funny. All right, so hopefully that can give you some clarity. Now, I know I haven't shown face on how to read because it's just going to get more complicated. They're the things that you need to think of. So I am going to upload the little presentation, which I've kind of used as my guide here, into the Crochet Learning Corner. So if you want to head to that group, it will be in the files soon. And I'll post it in the comments because this has gone live into that group as well. But hopefully that will help. And if you've ever got a pattern that you're a little bit stuck on, then the Crochet Learning Corner is also the place that you can learn to read that from. All right, so hopefully you had that made some things a little bit more clear for you. I am intending on doing these hook and learns. I'm calling hook and learn session, which I host in the clubhouse for my members every week as part of the projects that we get. But I'm going to come on here every few weeks and just anything we've got a little bit of trouble with is crochet, I'll give some guidance to. So make sure you follow so that you miss out. All right, so enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully now you'll find it a little bit easier to start having a go at reading a pattern. All right, thanks for joining. Bye.